Hi, welcome back to the channel. I'm Tina. I'm a dental hygienist. I live in Minnesota. We're coming up on a year, and I thought it might be interesting to see how much money I made this year as a new grad dental hygienist. A temp dental hygienist, the way patients understand it, the way patients like explain it, my own job to me when I tell them, oh, I don't work here, I'm just filling in. They're like, oh, you mean like a substitute teacher? So that might be a way for you to understand it. Basically, when people are out of the office for whatever reason, sickness, vacation, maternity leave, whatever, I go to offices and fill in. So a little bit of backstory. I went to a community college here in Minnesota. It's called Normandale Community College, and I graduated in May of 2025. I took the board exam, the MBDHE, on June 9th. I got my results on June 17th, passed the first try, go me. And then I sent all my documents off to the Board of Dentistry to get licensed on June 20th. And then I received my license on July 17th. And then I worked my first shift 6 days later on July 16th. For that first week, that was a Wednesday that I worked my first shift, and I only worked that one shift. I made $507.07. And I actually did vlog that if you want to take a look and see how that went for me. It's a really exciting day. I mean, the first day of dental hygiene school was also really exciting. I vlogged my first day. I vlogged most of dental hygiene school, but then I fell off because it's just like really hard to vlog, especially when I feel like I don't have a very interesting life. So I'm like filming everything, and then I have all this footage and I'm like, I don't know what to post. Like, it became tedious, but that's not what you came here for. You came here to see how much money I made. So that first week, only one shift. The next week I worked 3 shifts and I made a total of $1,449.38. And then the last week of the month, I worked an extra shift, 4 shifts. I made $1,695.73. And this is where I thought, like, am I being taxed too much? Because I worked a whole extra shift and I only made like $200 more. So this is where I went in and I kind of changed my tax withholding, or I don't know what it really was. I don't know if that's what it's called, the withholding. Do not quote me on that. But I like went and changed something on my taxes so that I wouldn't be taxed so much. I don't really know if it worked. I mean, I do owe a little bit for this year or last year, 2025. So, I mean, personally, I don't know if I'd rather owe or get money back. If you get money back, you are giving the government an interest-free loan. If you owe, then you owe, right? So I don't know. I don't really know what's best, but I'm glad. I guess I would rather owe, which is why I did the change, because I just felt like I wasn't getting all my money. Like I felt like I was getting hosed on taxes. And the total for the month of July was $3,652.18. And just for fun, just to kind of compare, before I started working as a dental hygienist, I worked at Whole Foods. I worked at the seafood counter. And so for the month prior, I made a total at Whole Foods of $951.40 for the whole month. So pretty much in like 2 days, I made more than I made all month at Whole Foods. Now we move to August. First week of August, I worked 3 shifts and I made $1,414.48. The second week, I was sick, so I only worked 2 shifts and I made $821.87. Third week, I worked 3 shifts, and my goal, I should say, going in was kind of to work 4 shifts, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. But this week I went to Texas. And so for the first week, when my vacation started, I made $1,481.53. And the week after, when I worked 2 shifts, I made $1,024.22. That makes a total for August, $4,741.90. And it felt really, really good to just be able to say, I'm making more money. I want to go on vacation. I want to visit my friends and family back in Texas. And I was able to just do that. That's one of the good things about temping. You don't have to ask for permission. You don't have to worry about patients. You don't have to get PTO. You just don't book shifts and then you don't have to go to work. I really enjoyed having that flexibility to go back home because I hadn't been home in a long time, being in school, just not working jobs that could like afford, to go and then also afford to be off work, right? So when I went to Texas, I got an Airbnb, I got a rental car, I drove from Dallas Fort Worth to Austin. It was just amazing. I just kind of like did it big and did everything I wanted to do that I felt like I couldn't do beforehand. In September, the first week I worked 3 shifts, and then the other 3 weeks of the month, I worked 4 shifts. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. The first week I made $1,601.98. The second week I made $1,747.33. The third week I made $1,880.69. And then the final week I made $1,836.65 for a grand total for the month of September of $7,134.17. So a pretty big difference after I came home from vacation and like kind of went to work and really, grinded it out. A big difference, but I will say that, I earned every single one of those dollars. Like temping is not for the weak. It is not for the weak at all. So I can't remember, exactly what shifts I worked that week, but I can promise you I earned every single one of those dollars. I can promise you. Moving on to this month, I only had 1 week that I worked 4 shifts. That was the second week. All the other weeks I worked 3 shifts. So the first week I made $1,391.95. Second week, $1,880.77. Third week, $1,234.76. Fourth week of October, I made $1,669.26. And the fifth and final week of October, I made $1,422.72 for a grand total of $7,675.69. Moving on to November. First week, I worked 4 shifts. I made $1,806.05. Second week, I dropped down back to 3 and I made $1,247.99. Third week, I really dropped down. I worked 1 shift and then I also cashed in $400 worth of PTO. That was before tax. And on that third week, I made a total of $768 even, which is weird. And in the final week of the month, I worked 2 shifts for a total of $873.75. That brings my total for November to $4,695.79. December, I bookended the month with the first week and the last week, I did 3 days a week. The second 2 weeks, I did 4 days a week. So for that first week, I made $1,445.81. Second week, $1,759.40. The third week, $1,866.63. And the fourth and final week, $1,182.20. That brings my total for December to $6,254.04. Pretty nice way to end the year. In January, the first week, I worked 2 shifts. I made $783.12. The second week, I worked 3 shifts, made $1,217.77. And for the next 2 weeks, I worked 4 shifts each. For the third week, I made $1,644.32. The fourth week, I made $1,748.02. And for the last week, I worked 3 shifts and cashed out $495 of PTO for a grand total for the week of $1,708.39. And that brought my total for January to $6,372.50. And near the end of the month in January, that's where I posted that video where I was like, I want to work less, but my goals are not getting cheaper. And that is the same. I think I really realized right around this point, it's like, I can't do 4 days a week. It's not the dental hygiene of it. It's like all the rest of the stuff, I've said it before. I might have even said it in that video. Sometimes when you temp, I feel like the offices, they don't even respect you as a human being sometimes, let alone as a dental hygienist. And so it got really tough. And still to this day, temping is rough. Temping can be rough. You never know what you're gonna get. And so this is kind of where I decided I just gotta try to work 3 days a week, yeah. So January was the last month that I purposefully worked 4 days a week. You're going to see one more 4-day week later, but I will explain how that happened. And, we'll get into that just a little bit. Moving on to February, the first week of the month, I worked 3 shifts for a total of $986.93. The second week, I worked 2 shifts for a total of $846.77. The third week, I just worked 1 shift and I made $460.14. However, I went on 10 interviews this week. So I was working, I just wasn't getting paid. I was definitely working, trying to figure out if there was an office that was right for me. I went on some place and they said that they do 50-minute recalls. And, I learned a lot about interviewing. I learned a lot about not even wasting my time, questions that I should ask before I even show up there. So it was great. I think it was a really good learning experience. I did way better at that last interview than I did at the first. Every interview I kind of learned something about myself and how to interview and whatever. So after those 10 interviews, the next week I did work 3 shifts for a total of $1,075.07, bringing my grand total for February to $2,975.84. Now that brings us to March. March is where things got a little different. So for the first week in March, I worked 2 shifts and then I got paid out for earned sick and safe time for 1 shift on that first week. So that brought my first week total to $1,173.98. Second week, I worked 3 shifts for $1,136.01. The third week, I worked 2 shifts for a total of $788.24. Fourth week, I didn't work at all. I just decided I wasn't in the mood. So I was like, I'm not doing this. I need a break. I can't do it. So I took some time off. And then the last week of the month, I worked 4 shifts and I got paid $1,081.19. And that brought my total for March to $4,179.32. Now, a couple things about March. So going back to the first week, if you're not familiar with what earned sick and safe time is and you live in the state of Minnesota, I would definitely encourage you to go on the Department of Labor and check that out. Basically, for every 30 hours you work, part-time, full-time, you get 1 hour of earned sick and safe time. And something that you should know if you don't know already, it is illegal for your employer to retaliate against you for using earned sick and safe time. Just keep that in your back pocket. You might need to use that. That information has been really helpful for me to know, but it is illegal for your employer to retaliate against you. And retaliating against you does include, let's say, back when I was a flight attendant, I think it's so crazy because I was a flight attendant for so long. You would think that I would remember things about a job that I was at for 11 years, but I don't really remember. But I think when I was a flight attendant, like if you were absent, there was like a point system or something. I think it was like occurrences or something. So if you're a flight attendant and you call out sick and you use earned sick and safe time, it will be illegal for your employer to charge you an occurrence for using earned sick and safe time. There's a lot of other things they can do that are illegal. Check it out on the Department of Labor website if you're interested. But like I said, keep that in your head. It might come in handy to you. It has come in handy for me to know my rights as far as what is and is not illegal. Now, why did I work 4 shifts on the last week of March? Is it because I didn't work at all the week before? Not exactly. It was because if you've been here for any amount of time, you might get the idea that, I don't know what you want to call it, but you probably would get the idea that like, I'm okay to stand up for myself. Like I'm not really doing anything I don't want to do. But sometimes when people ask me to do things, I agree to them. And then I'm like, why did I do that? Like, why did I do that? So I had an employer who asked me to basically work on a Wednesday, and I agreed to do that. But I had already had shifts for Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. And I had never, and still to this day, since then, I have never worked 4 days in a row. Like I'm not built for that. I'm not built for that. If you are, I love that for you, but it's not for me. So I agreed to something that I should never have agreed to and that I will never agree to again. But thankfully, I learned a lesson about saying no and making sure that my boundaries stay strong all the time. So that's how that happened. Let's move on to April. Probably because I worked so many damn days the last week. For the first week of April, I worked 1 shift, okay? And I made a total of $567.81. For the second week in April, I worked 3 shifts, made a total of $1,364.92. The third week, I worked 3 shifts again, made $1,647.33. And the last week of the month, I worked 3 shifts. One of them was a working interview, and I also did 2 other like in-person or phone call interviews that week as well. And for the last week, I made $794.95, bringing my total for April to $4,365.01. For May, which is the last month that I have a full month of paychecks for, I have not, as of filming, gotten paid for anything in June. However, that is coming soon. And just a little programming note, if you're still here, you're probably already subscribed, but if you're not, make sure that you're subscribed so you don't miss my next video. I will be taking a break. My birthday is this week and I'm going on a cruise on Fridays. I'll post 1 video a week for the next 2 weeks. So subscribe so you don't miss it. But that next video that I post will be my payday routine, my YNAB budget with me for my first shifts that I worked in June. So come back if you'd like to see that. But for May, the first week of the month, I worked once again 0 shifts. I needed a break. I needed another break, okay? I did 2 interviews this week, and for the second week of May, I worked 2 shifts. Well, my notes said that I worked 2 shifts, but I think I might have worked 3 shifts because the amount of money that I made is more than, I think it's too much. Not like too much, like pay me whatever you want. But I made $1,216.21. I do know that this week I had 1 working interview, so I think I might have miswritten, and I think I might have worked 3 shifts. I was also sick this week, and I was also underpaid once again from Tiro. So actually, I'm still waiting on getting the rest of my money for that shift. I did get paid fully for the shift that I was underpaid that I mentioned back in March, I think it was, but I still to this day, as of filming, have not gotten all the rest of my pay for that shift in May, which is disappointing, but honestly, very expected with my experiences with Tiro. The third week of May, I worked 1 shift and I was paid out for earned sick and safe time for 1 shift. I made a total of $833.39. And for the final week of May, I worked 2 shifts for a total of $960.09. And I think maybe I got fatigued when I was doing my notes because I don't remember being sick 2 weeks in a row. I think maybe something got mixed up, but I think the figures are right. I'm not really sure what happened there, but the total for May was $3,059.69. That brings me to a total for my first year almost as a registered dental hygienist in the state of Minnesota who has primarily worked as a temp. My take-home pay, when you don't account for these about 6 weeks that I still have left to get paid, keeping in mind, like I said, I'm going on a vacation. I'll be gone for a week. I went to Texas for 4 days. I went to Vegas for 3 days. I forgot to mention that. That was in November. My grand total for the year is $55,106.13. Not bad for a girl who was making $16.25 or was it $16.75 at Whole Foods slinging fish, if I do say so myself. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments, and I will see y'all next for a payday routine budget with me. Bye.